This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Fan Report. I'm Nick, and with me is Andrew.
Hello.
Back from a week-long, or I guess it would be 2-week-long hiatus, but it'll have been 2 weeks since you heard us, but we only missed a week. Andrew, how was your vacation?
It was busy. It was a good road trip going through Montreal, Boston, Maine, New Hampshire. It was fun.
How was getting across the border? Was that a pain in the ass?
You have to, there's like an app now, and you have to just kind of like pull your information in the app, like whatever your documentation is, like your passport or your enhanced license or whatever, your like vaccination stuff. And I think as long as you do that, like it was pretty smooth going in and out. But it also depends on the.
I think that's required. So if you don't do it, you probably aren't getting through.
Well, I assume if like there's older people crossing the border, they don't know how to download an app or don't even know about the app. Like they probably just do it right at the border for them. Probably just takes longer.
That might be true. That might be the case. But
yeah, it also depends on what kind of person you get. Like we crossed a couple different times, and sometimes the person was like doing a full on interrogation.
A couple different times.
Yeah, because when we left through the Canadian border and then out into the U.S. and then back to the Canadian border and then out into the U.S.
Why? Oh, so you guys drove through Canada to get to the Northeast?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Where'd you guys cross at?
Port Huron.
Port Huron. Oh, yeah, that's okay. Mm-hmm. So my family would go into Canada through Port Huron, the Blue Water Bridge, all the time when I was growing up. And getting into Canada at the Blue Water Bridge is a huge pain in the ass because the Border Patrol agents for Canada there are like extremely strict and not exactly nice versus like going across at the bridge or at the Ambassador Bridge or the tunnel downtown. They are the nicest people ever there. So I don't know what it is about them up near Sarnia is where it is on Canada side of the Blue Water Bridge versus Windsor. But my God, how was it coming back? Because I know the U.S. Border Patrol agents are always mean. At least they've always been mean to me.
Actually, it was easier coming back than going out.
All right, fair enough.
The only tough part about going back was we went into Canada through the Niagara border.
Okay.
To come back out like on the way back, and just the only thing was the traffic at the Niagara border was like a 1 hour delay.
I can imagine. I've experienced that at the Blue Water Bridge too. Like I've experienced 3 hour traffic there.
But like actually being at the talking to like the border person, that took like 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's good. How was Boston during the NBA Finals?
I wish there was a home game going on, but they were away when we were there.
Okay, well, fair enough. What was your favorite part?
Kind of bar hopping. There was a period where I left like between meeting up with friends and being with family. There was a period I was like on my own, just bar hopping.
By yourself?
By myself.
In Boston?
I went to like the historic bars, like the did
you meet up with Johnny in Boston?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Bell in Hand, what's that super historic one called? The Green Dragon.
Okay.
So I had both places, like the bartender had like a super thick Boston accent. It was when I was at the Green Dragon, like someone next to me heard a harp and the
Haplage.
Yeah, that's how he said it. Was like, can I get that? Like he was asking like what kind of lagers you guys have, and the bartender's like, yeah, we got a Haplage. And that was the next beer I was going to order after I was done drinking my beer. I'm like, I really just want to say Haplage, but I also don't want to get punched in the face, man.
Yeah, they would do that in Boston. They would do that. Well, I got to get back out to Boston. I loved it. I absolutely need to go back to that city. I miss it. No, sounds like you had a good trip. Obviously, guys, we
had some clam chowder.
Did you? Was it good?
Says lobster roll.
I mean, lobster rolls are always great. Was the clam chowder any good? I've never actually had clam chowder.
Had clam chowder in Boston. It was delicious. Had lobster roll in Maine. It was delicious. So,
Maine lobster roll would be so good. Did you have a lobster roll in Boston? Because I remember we went to Boston and got some lobster rolls last time we were there.
I had at Faneuil.
Oh, Faneuil Hall. Mm-hmm. Faneuil Hall was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Man, we got to go back.
Mm-hmm.
We got to go back. Obviously, guys, we are brought to you by the Detroit Sports Podcast.
It doesn't sound like it because we're talking about Boston.
Right. Follow them on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Also, give us a follow at Real Fan Report. Jesus, I forgot our Twitter for a second. Oh, man. But, well, glad to have you back. Obviously, I know you're still busy, so but we gotta make sure we get some beer soon.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but let's go ahead and kick things off today, guys. Obviously, we are going to be talking about the NBA Draft Lottery because we didn't get to give our reactions last week. We're going to be continuing our prospect profiles here with a couple of guys that I actually think are legitimate chances to go to the Pistons at 5, as well as a couple trade scenarios with Jerami Grant.
James Edwards actually reported out there's 4 key players the Pistons are looking at, and 2 of them are the guys talking about today.
So I know we talked about Jalen Brunson the other week and whether or not we're tempering our thoughts on him at all. Is that still the case? Are we still tempering our thoughts on him? I know he's been a little bit up and down since, but he's had a lot of really high ups too.
Based on where we found the lottery, I personally am, because now 3 of the 4 prospects are off-guard prospects, and it wouldn't really make sense unless you were taking Shaden Sharp. It really wouldn't make sense to pay big bucks to
bring in another guard when we're drafting a guard high, and that's fair. I mean, I'll say this: if the Pistons' backcourt isn't one of the top 10 in the league, after spending 3 top 10, including 2 top 5. Which also includes a number 1 overall pick on your backcourt in the last 3 drafts, then we did a terrible job. Terrible job drafting at that point. But anyways, let's go ahead and kick it off here. What do you want to start with today?
We can start with the lottery because that basically just sets the stage for all the other discussions.
Yes, absolutely. I like it. Obviously, drafting number 5 overall, not what we wanted. What was your initial reaction?
I mean, I got really excited when I saw we weren't 6 because, like, and I only saw like 1 team jumped up. So like once I saw that we weren't 6, I'm like, all right, we're in. Like, we're not going to be like 6 was in my head like the big danger spot. I'm like, all right, we're in the top. And then we came up just out of the, like, it felt like out of nowhere, like a smack in the face when we came up at 5.
You knew damn well they weren't going to give a Detroit team the number 1 overall pick 2 years in a row.
So
you damn well that wasn't happening.
Apparently, like the way like the lottery goes or whatever, we were 1 number away from getting number 1 again. Like, because like there's like a series of numbers or whatever. Yeah.
Why do they have to do it this way? I hate the draft lottery. I think it is so stupid.
We were 1 ball. We were the closest team outside of the team we got the number 1 pick, Orlando. We were the closest team in the number 1 pick.
I hate the NBA draft lottery and the way they do it. I think they argue that like
difference.
They argue that it removes tanking from the league, and I would say that like.
It absolutely does not.
It not only absolutely does not, it almost encourages it. Because, like, look at the NFL and the way they do things. They don't necessarily have a tanking problem in the NFL, and the reason is because part of the reason is because a lot of the teams that are near that fringe tank point won't do it because they know they're not bad enough to be in the running for the number 1 or number 2 overall pick. They know they're not that bad. Versus the NBA, with it being the way it is, where the bottom 3 teams have the highest chance of the number 1, and then the other teams also have a chance of number 1. Like, that opens the door for like 5 or 6 teams to actively tank in the NBA. And when you have that many teams that are, I don't want to say purposely trying to lose, but like certainly not putting the best basketball teams together to win games out there, like that makes for a really bad product.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this whole NBA draft lottery, not encouraging tanking thing is working at all.
Yeah. I've been against the draft. Like even last year when we had the more overall pick, I mean, I was super happy that we had a draft lottery when that happened.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I still acknowledge at the same time, I still acknowledge the draft lottery is kind of stupid. But in all honesty, I would much rather have had this happen to us this year than last year. Because unlike last year, there was 3, maybe 4 guys that I was super high on and like basically super confident these were going to be. And it was, and in all reality,
it was really just a 1-2 race last year.
And this year, like everyone in the top 3, I have major question marks on each person. Like each person has a glaring question mark. So like it's even if we got the number 1 pick, I know I'm just talking about like the people that are completely out of reach for us. You know, those top 3 that aren't going to be there at 5 or 90% chance they're not going to be there at 5. That's what I'm talking about. But like even if we did get the 1 pick this year, I would not. I would be debating who we're drafting all the way up to draft day. I
100% agree with you. Like I almost would rather had. I don't want to say I would have rather not get the number 1 overall pick. But
yeah, that's never the case.
For like my health, it probably would have been better not to get the number 1 overall pick because I would have been anxious as hell for the next probably 2-3 years to see if the guy we picked was the right guy. But I didn't want to go all the way back to 5.
Yeah.
Like
ideally, I was hoping it would be at least 4. Like I was hoping it would be at least 4.
Stay inside the top 4. You're gonna do well with any of those 4.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, you could argue top 5 because the wrinkle thrown in with Shaden Sharp. Reports saying that he's probably jumping into the top 3 now changes that from 4 to 5 because obviously one guy would have to move back. But I wanted to stay inside the top 4 so that I could guarantee myself one of the big 4 guys that we've been talking about, to death for the last several months now. Like I wanted one of Chet, Jabari, Paolo, or Jaden Ivey, and now there's a really solid chance that we don't get any of them.
Now, there's a good chance that you will get, unless Chet Holmgren falls, there's a really good chance that one of, if not both, Jaden Ivey and Shaden Sharp will be there for you at 5.
Right. I don't think it'll be both. I think
I think it's probably one or the other. Who would you rather have sitting there? Is my question to you. Like if you have both, who'd you rather take? Is another way to pose the question.
The player that I like more is possibly not necessarily the player that has the highest ceiling in my mind. I think Shaden Sharp has the highest ceiling in this draft of any player outside of maybe Chet Holmgren. But the player I think that I want at 5 in that range would be Jaden Ivey. I think that the player just fits with Cade. I think that the opportunity that's there to solidify an elite tier backcourt is just too great to pass up. Like I think having Jaden Ivey would really put this team in a great position to be successful moving forward. And I'm going to kind of tie this into something in a little bit after we're kind of done talking about the draft lottery, about how the time is starting to tick with Troy Weaver in this front office and this Pistons team that things need to start happening beginning this year. So, frankly, adding Jaden Ivey to that really would put them in a good position to make that happen. Now, if you add Shaden Sharp, that's the wild card. Like that, if you want to talk about it, that's like the Joker card. You don't know what he is, what he's going to do. He could, like I said, he has the highest ceiling in this draft. He could be an absolute superstar and put you at levels you never would have fathomed. Or he could totally bust out. Like I think the bust potential there is every bit as high as Chet Holmgren's, if not higher.
It's a ballsy pick in the top 5.
But the ceiling that's there is it's the home run swing is there. Like this guy could be the home run that the Pistons need to put them above. Now, my question mark is how does a guy like Shaden Sharp work with a guy like Cade Cunningham? Both want the ball in their hands, obviously. So there's going to have to be some fit arrangements put in place there. But that's a very good problem to have when you have 2 elite tier ball handlers, 2 elite tier scorers that can do it all.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Jaden Ivey, too.
Right. Jaden Ivey can... There's a clear pecking order with Jaden Ivey. There wouldn't necessarily be a clear pecking order with Shaden Sharp.
Oh, I'm just talking about 2 guys that want the ball in their hands, basically, is what I'm...
Right,
getting
but at
at.
least with Jaden Ivey, you don't have to necessarily worry about a battle of heads, so to speak. I mean, unless Jaden Ivey really thinks that highly of himself, but which I hope he does. But at the same, if he's outwardly with it, that could become a problem. But there is an obvious pecking order with Jaden Ivey that there wouldn't be with Shaden Sharp and Cade Cunningham.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't disagree.
And again, good problem to have.
It's an interesting thing because usually I'm the person that says in the top 5, you swing for the fences, you go for the home run pick, and for
it's
all
okay
intents,
for both to be home run picks, though. Like,
that's the
Jaden
thing.
Ivey
It's
absolutely
like,
is a home run pick, but like, whereas Jaden Ivey is the home run pick, he's probably the 350-foot home run pick versus Shaden Sharp could be the 450-foot home run pick.
Yeah,
like the big.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's a weird thing because even though Shaden Sharp has a higher potential, you're basically putting, I don't want to say putting the rebuild on hold, but you're
kicking it down the line a little bit.
You're kicking down the line a little bit.
If we wanted, if with what I'm about to say in a few minutes here, is that something that this team can afford to do?
And with Jaden Ivey, I mean, I do have more questions about Jaden Ivey, but that's just because we know so little about Jaden Sharp. Like, I have more specific questions about Jaden Ivey. My question about Shaden Sharp is, what is he still? Like,
is he good at basketball?
But like,
isn't Shaden Sharp from Canada? Like, he's from London, Ontario, isn't he?
I'm not sure. To be honest,
I'm pretty sure he is. Give me a sec.
Like, one of my big questions is, why didn't he play basketball this year? He was on the team. Why didn't he play basketball this year?
I thought it had
that's
to do
one
with
question.
Eligibility.
Oh, he was eligible, I thought.
I don't know if he was or not. Yes, he's from London, Ontario. I don't know a ton of superstar prospects coming out of London, Ontario, or Canada, for that matter. Like, Canada's not known for their excellent basketball programs. Don't get me wrong. Yes, you have...
What, Air Canada, Andrew Wiggins doesn't count?
You have legends that come out of Canada and really good players that come out of Canada, like Wiggins, and I believe Steve Nash. Isn't he Canadian?
I believe so.
So, yes, there are really good basketball players that have come... Steve Nash was born in South Africa.
I thought he was Canadian.
I thought he was Canadian. I think this is a lie. It's not, but I could have sworn he was Canadian. But anyways, you obviously have great basketball talent that comes out of Canada. It's just not as... The high school competition isn't the same in Canada as it is here.
Complex's list of 15 best Canadian basketball players does not have Steve Nash on it.
Okay, all right.
But
okay, here we go.
These are all current though. That's why
he is a South African-born Canadian basketball player.
Yeah,
I don't know how that works, but that's what it is.
All right, here we go. Here's your five best Canadian basketball players of all time. I don't know how we got down this road.
Now, this sounds like a list we would have done on the live show.
Absolutely. Number 5 is Jamal McGlure. Number 4 is Tristan Thompson. Yeesh. Number 3 is Andrew Wiggins. 2, Rick Fox. 1, Steve Nash.
So
that
clearly the bar is not that high.
From 2 to 1.
Yeah. So Shaden Sharp could spend 2 years in the league and already be number 2.
Yep.
So does that knock Shaden Sharp down a peg for you?
We're getting potentially the best Canadian basketball player of all time.
We could be. How far is that from saying the best Lebanese basketball player of all time?
I can name one that actually played in the NBA, Ronnie Cycling. He was actually good. I think he made an All-Star game.
one All-Star game.
I think he made one.
But obviously, Shaden Sharp has a really high ceiling, and there's a lot of potential there. And yes, that's the big home run pick there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the right pick for this team, because you also have to shuffle your lineup around a little bit. You have to shuffle roles around. You have to figure out how you make Shaden Sharp work with Cade Cunningham. And you also still have to figure out a 2-guard, which could be Jalen Brunson. I mean, as we mentioned, that could be Jalen Brunson there if you want to throw the bag at him, which is entirely possible. I think Jalen Brunson probably gets somewhere in the realm of 20 to 25 mil. And if it's on the... I will set my cap for Jalen Brunson at 22.5. I'd be willing to go to 23 max. I will not go higher than that. Absolutely not. So if we go Shaden Sharp and Jalen Brunson becomes our 2-guard, I like the looks of this team for the future. But personally, I prefer Jaden Ivey at that spot.
But let's talk. There's 2 other prospects. So there's, according to James Edwards, there's 4 prospects that the Pistons have focused in on at the 5 spot.
Do we want to get into the prospect profiles now, or do we want to go into what I was going to talk about?
It's a natural progression, and then we'll keep moving from there. 2 who we just talked about, which are Shane Sharp and Jaden Ivey. The other 2, Keegan Murray and Benedict Mathurin. Benedict Mathurin and Keegan Murray are who we are set to talk about in our prospect profiles today. So,
yep. Who do you want
should we start with the almost consensus lower ranked prospect in
Keegan Murray?
Benedict Mathurin?
Oh.
Well, throw the word consensus out the window. It's always a bad sound when you say consensus and the other person says the other guy.
Yeah. I could have sworn Ben Math was the higher prospect. I guess not. I mean, looking at the recent mock drafts, that would be true, but going by some of the older numbers, not so much, because Ben Math has moved, although I've seen Ben Math anywhere from 10 to 5 in that regard, but I've seen Keegan Murray usually in that 7 to 8 range, so I guess. Yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead and start with Benedict Mathurin. That's fine. 6'6" guard with a 6'9" wingspan, 205 pounds. He's got good size, especially at the 2 guard with that 6'9" wingspan. That's great. He's got a lot of potential, and he would be a guy that, again, the fit is absolutely there with a guy like Benedict Mathurin. You can have you have a clear pecking order with Cade to Ben Math. He's got a lot of tools, and he's got an ability to take over games as well, and that is something that we would need out of a secondary guy to Cade Cunningham. If we, having 2 guys that can take over a game is obviously extremely important. He's solid athletically. I don't think he's a great athlete by any measure, but he's a good athlete.
He'll already be one of the best athletes, probably the best athlete behind Hamidou Diallo in our.
We don't have a ton of athletes on this team.
That's one thing I'm targeting this draft.
Again, though, great size. He's strong. He's quick he's quick with the ball, quick off ball, and he's got some bounce. Again, that attributes to the athleticism there. Good shot, nice touch. He can score in ISO, which again, taking over a game is important. He's solid from outside. I believe he had shot 37% from outside in college. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about Benedict Mathurin. I just don't think the ceiling is that high. Like, in terms of the ceiling of what he could be, I would compare it to like a Chris Middleton, a guy who can make an all-star game or 2 in his career, who is a really solid player.
You know who James Edwards compared him to? It scared the shit out of me.
Who?
He said he's a KCP clone, which I don't agree with. I do see shades of KCP.
I see shades, but I think he's just he's a better polished offensive player.
Yeah, he's a better passer than KCP. I think he's more athletic than KCP. And we'll see if he ends up being a better shooter.
I think he's got more energy than KCP. Like I just don't see. I mean, I can see the makeup with it, sure. I just don't see he's just more polished than KCP. Like in terms of, I'm not talking the same type of player as Chris Middleton. I think that's just the ceiling that you're looking at. Like a guy who can flirt with a couple all-stars, maybe make 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever.
A key role player on the starting five.
Be a really solid contributor to a really good basketball team.
He's a fit pick for us.
Yes,
he's
absolutely.
a really solid fit across from Cade Cunningham. A guy, he's really good on catch and shoot threes. He needs to improve a little bit off the dribble, but he's a really good catch and shoot 3-point shooter, which as long as he can get him the rock in the perimeter in an open spot, it's really what we need.
You got to keep his head in the game on the defensive side of the ball.
True.
He does sometimes take plays off defensively or doesn't bring the same tenacity. And as we've always been saying, defense is like 90% effort. So you're going to have to coach that into him, that he's got to bring it up and down the floor every time. That's true with loose balls defensively as well as on the ball and off ball. You just got to keep him in the game. He does need to work on his dribble drive game a little bit, making his own plays, creating his own shot, which he may not necessarily have to do that much with Cade, but
he's definitely not like a shot creator.
Right. Yeah. I definitely would like him to show some ability to do that.
That's my prototypical two-guard prospect is next to Cade Cunningham is an athletic shot creator. But
yes, which Jaden Ivey is.
Mm-hmm. They just needs to knock him down.
Yeah. I mean, everybody just needs to knock him down.
See, okay, not to harp on Jaden Ivey again, but that's I think the part that scares me most about Jaden Ivey is I got really confident in him once he turned his 3-point percentage around, like beginning of the season, and like once he kept it going throughout the season, but like the last like 12 or so games, he went back to his freshman year numbers again.
Yeah.
So I no longer know if that was that him going back to the norm, or was that an exception to what's the new norm? I don't know anymore. So
I would hope progression.
I was waiting I kept waiting for him to come back up out of it, but you never did.
Right. I would hope progression is something that'll happen with him. The thing I like about Benedict Mathurin, though, is he showed a willingness to shoot outside a lot more this year, almost doubling his 3-point attempts this year, and still making that 37%, which in my mind, that 36, 37, 38% is like the floor of what I would want, opposite of Cade Cunningham there. Somebody who can shoot from outside, because there are nights where Cade doesn't have it from out there, and we need somebody that does.
Yeah.
And not just Sadiq Bey. Because right now, that's something the Pistons seriously lack, is outside of Sadiq Bey, they don't have a ton of reliable shooting that plays more than 5 minutes a game. Sorry, Isaiah Livers, but we need some reliable shooting to go alongside Cade. Mm-hmm. And Ben Math brings that.
Absolutely. Moving on to Keegan Murray. I mean, there's one word I use.
Well, hang on. Before you move on to Keegan Murray, what do you think the ceiling is for a guy like Benedict Mathurin?
Like I said, I think he's a key role player on a starting five. That is his ceiling.
Is there a player comparison that you like there?
Oh, that's a good question.
I've seen Quentin Richardson thrown out. I don't know how much I like that.
I think I would say Oladipo pre-injury.
He was a superstar pre-injury, though.
He wasn't a superstar. He was
he was like a 25 game guy.
He was a college superstar. He wasn't an NBA superstar.
With Indiana? That dude was a star with Indiana.
But, in college with Indiana, yeah.
Oh, with the Indiana Pacers, he made 2 straight All-Star games, putting up 23 points a game. Mm-hmm. He was a stud. Mm-hmm.
But basically what I'm getting at with Ben Math, it's not the sexiest pick in the world at all.
It's not.
But it's a really good fit. And it's a pick that I wouldn't be mad at if we made it.
Right. I'll agree with you there. I like Jason Richardson as a comparison is interesting. I can kind of see that. Comparison. I can kind of see that. Guy with some bounce, solid shooter, not a great shot creator, but can make it happen. Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Yeah, if you look at Indiana Oladipo, was it 23 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, shooting 37% from 3, and then the next season 18 points, 5. Those are his 2 All-Star seasons.
Yeah.
I can definitely see Ben Math with those shooting splits somewhere right in there, like maybe like a 20, 21 point per game guy right around.
He better.
I can definitely see him get 5.
He better.
But yeah, so
moving on to Keegan Murray here, the wing from Iowa. Now, this isn't necessarily as much of a fit pick as it is. He potentially is just the best player available here. I've seen him draw comparisons to Pascal Siakam, Tolerado Porter, Obi Toppin. It's no secret I love Obi Toppin on the show, but he hasn't lived up to my expectations for him. I'll give him that. Although he did show some flashes this year. He did. But he's an efficient player, which the Pistons do need to add some efficiency. Their shooting splits last year were god-awful, especially in the first half. He can space the floor. He does it all. And this is one of the key things with Keegan Murray is he doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands to be effective. He makes a lot of shots, and he's a really efficient scorer from outside. And that's, I mean, you want to talk about Pistons' needs in terms of what a guy does that they need to fill. Keegan Murray does a lot of those things. But again, another guy that just doesn't have a very high ceiling. This would probably be a guy that I would say you could pencil him in fighting for the number 2 guy behind or alongside Sadiq Bey. Like, do we need another guy in that range on this team? I would probably say no. I would prefer going after a guy who's a very clear number 2 behind Cade Cunningham, more so than a guy who flirts with 2 and 3, some nights 4. That's my concern with Keegan Murray.
My big concern with Keegan Murray is the fact that, I mean, you're drafting someone top 5. You're going to want to slide him in the starting lineup sooner and later. It's just it makes our starting 5 dangerously unathletic. Because Keegan Murray is also not athletic.
He's not very athletic, but he's got like smooth athleticism. He's kind of like Cade in that regard. Like he kind of shows a flash of athleticism, but like it's not ever gonna wow you. It's just he just did that.
The touch of Cade that I'll give you is he definitely has a knack for finding his spot and just finding a way to put the ball in the hoop. Like he definitely doesn't wow you on any of his like game tape or anything like that. Any of the highlights you watch, nothing wows you, but he just finds a way to get to the spot. Even off ball, he's a really good cutter. He knows how to get open. He knows how to get away from his man. And
that type of game does remind me a lot of Cade. Mm-hmm. Like Cade doesn't do things on film that wow you. You know, it's not the flashiness of Luka or the athleticism of Ja Morant or anybody, but he just plays really good basketball and always just gets the job done.
Yeah,
and I can see that with Keegan Murray. I don't think Keegan Murray has that level that Cade can reach. I mean, he does shoot 40% from outside. He is very efficient. He's got great length and intangibles. Like, I want to say 6'8", but he's got a 6'11" wingspan. He's 225 pounds, got great size. Like, the comparisons that I do see for him are Otto Porter. I've seen a little bit of Michael Porter Jr. Like, that's a good player.
Yeah.
It's just not a great player. And you bring up the concern of will be a serious lack of athleticism with the starting rotation if he's on it.
One thing about Keegan Murray, though, because we did talk about fit a little bit with him, and I really do think if you draft Keegan Murray, most nights, I think you may be better off playing him at the 3, because
even though he's a natural 4.
Well, here's the reason.
Because he played in college.
He played even small ball 5.
I was going to say in college he played primarily 4 and a small ball 5. You didn't really see him at Moonlight at the 3 very often.
Here's the thing that you saw time and time again in college. He really struggled down low when the other team had length down low. He struggled to score down low against length, and he's going to see that every night in the NBA.
I was going to say the NBA is nothing but length, especially at the wing position.
I don't know if you're going to be muting him, basically, if you stick him at the 4 in the NBA, unless you're playing a team that's been a 4 out one end, then maybe you might be a little better off. But then in that same vein, how comfortable are you playing Saddiq Bey at the 4 for a majority of minutes rather than the 3?
Well, that was kind of the role that Saddiq took on when Jerami Grant went down, which he flourished at. Like that was when Headband Deke came around. Like
Headband Deke,
Saddiq at the 4 absolutely succeeded for the most part. Yes, he had a few off nights here and there, but he also still succeeded when Jerami Grant came back and he moved back into 3. So, but I do think Saddiq's got the body to play that 4 position. Like, my concern with a guy like Keegan Murray, I don't want us to put together a roster that almost mirrors that Tobias Harris, Reggie Jackson, in terms of the wing position, Blake Griffin type team. Like, I don't want to see that team again. Because Tobias Harris, what was the biggest issue with him? He struggled to find a role here. He was in between positions all the time.
Yep.
What was the issue? And he struggled to play alongside the other wing. Like, that was a fact. And looking at Keegan Murray's makeup, I see a lot of similar situations there. He's a tweener guy. Like, and he doesn't really have a true position in that regard because he's a tweener guy. So I don't think it necessarily would work as well with a guy like Keegan Murray as it could with somebody else.
It always scares me when I hear no true position, do it all kind of guy, Swiss Army knife, not great.
That can either be amazing or terrible. Like, yes. Guys like Chet Holmgren, who are the Swiss Army knife, do it all, no true position. Yeah, that's wonderful. When they're 7 feet tall, can handle the ball like a point guard. I am concerned with the bust potential with him, but that's beside the point. But, like,
so
I don't know. There is a lot of question marks with Keegan Murray and whether or not he's able to find a role on a team in the NBA.
So who do you like better as a prospect between the two?
I think the better fit's Benedict Mathurin.
I think the better fit. Honestly, I do feel like it's an unpopular opinion.
I think it is too. I think
Benedict Mathurin is the better player too.
I think that would be the unpopular opinion.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's an unpopular opinion.
Better fit is Benedict
Mathurin,
and even more, in my opinion, and the more controversial opinion is I do think Benedict Mathurin would be the better prospect for the Pistons to take.
Yeah.
Like
I think Keegan a better college player. I just think Benedict Mathurin is going to translate.
Yes, I think there are fewer question marks with Ben Math's NBA type game than there are with Keegan Murray's NBA type game. Yep. Like Keegan Murray is one of those tweener guys that struggles to make it happen in the NBA. And it's not like a situation where he can carve out a role because he plays elite tier defense like a PJ Tucker. Like PJ Tucker can shut down anybody on the floor. Keegan Murray's not that guy, and he ain't ever going to be that guy. Like Keegan Murray could be a good basketball player in the NBA. I just don't know if he's ever going to be what we need him to be.
There is a poll that was put up on Reddit a couple days ago, but I have to bring one thing up before this. This is the poll that I want to use to close out like this little portion of draft talk. There have been a couple trades that have been. Well, they're not actual rumors or anything, but so John Hollinger and Zach Lowe have both come out in the past few days saying that Portland is interested or looking to move
in love with Jerami Grant,
the number 7 pick, and one of the most likely players to be moved for that number 7 pick is Jerami Grant. Both Zach Lowe.
I would
John
pull
Hollinger
down my pants and do the helicopter dance.
You should have seen Portland Portland Reddit. They were freaking out.
As they should be. If my GM traded the number 7 overall pick for Jerami Grant, I would go down there myself and fire him. Like, I really like Jerami Grant as a player, but he ain't in no way is a number 7 overall number pick.
So here's one proposed
I don't even
Jerami
know
Grant trade.
Number 7 overall pick. Whatever. What?
Here's one proposed Jerami Grant trade that I saw. I could not find the original article. I saw these images posted on Twitter, and they look like they're from Bleacher Report, but I could not find the original article for these. But in this trade...
Bleacher Report? Well, we can already throw those in the trash.
Well, these aren't actual rumors. These are just, hey, look at this scenario.
Yeah, that's why we can throw them in the trash.
Portland, Pistons trade Jerami Grant to Portland for Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, number 7 pick. I mean, I say yes pretty immediately to that.
You can just insert trash can here, trash can here. As long as the number 7 overall pick is there, I'm good.
Okay, would you rather that, though, or Jerami Grant to the Pelicans for number 8, along with Jackson Hayes and Devontae Graham?
Give me the Pels. Give me the Pels trade. You get me to tell me we get Jackson Hayes, too? Hell yeah. I've always been, like... I call me crazy, call me an unpopular opinion. I've always been a big fan of Jackson Hayes. Back when he was in college at Texas, like, I seriously thought they drastically underutilized Jackson Hayes in New Orleans, and you saw it when he got minutes because dude produced when he got minutes there. I would love to have Jackson Hayes in a Pistons uniform. Would love it.
Not to mention Devontae Graham.
Overall, hell yeah, and Devontae Graham, sweet, love it.
Like obviously Devontae Graham is kind of. I feel like he's been on a downward trend since his breakout season, his sophomore year. But
like,
I still like him.
I straight up think that trade would be highway robbery, in my opinion. Like, I like Jerami Grant, but I get Jackson Hayes, Devontae Graham, and the number 8 overall pick. That's highway robbery in my mind. I would be shocked if the Pelicans agreed to that, and I don't think the Pelicans front office is dumb enough. Dumb enough.
No, I don't think they do
to give up number 8 and Jackson Hayes. Like,
I definitely think the Blazers trade is more likely, but Eric Bledsoe is just a salary match thing. I think he's an expiring deal also. The only interesting piece in that trade is Keon Johnson, and you don't know really what you're getting there quite yet. No idea. So, but with that being said,
number 7 overall pick is an interesting piece. Now, just out of I'm going to throw something out to you here, and I don't know why this came to my mind just now, but I am struggling to like this idea of trading Jerami Grant for, let's call it a top 10 pick, and salaries match and everything. But the other team, let's say it's Portland. Let's say we get that Keon Johnson trade with Keon Johnson, Eric Bledsoe, number 7 for Jerami Grant, and they want Killian Hayes too. I don't want to trade Killian anymore.
No.
Like I don't.
No.
I'm struggling to say yes to this. Like, in no way. And if you look at the production that the players brought, like, in no way should we be saying no to that. We get a top 10 pick at number 8. We get a question mark in Keon Johnson, who's a young talent. Like, we should not be saying no to that. But at the same time, I'm struggling to sit here and tell you I'd be happy with that trade.
Yeah, Killian saved his reputation with the second half that he had. Yeah.
It's not even the second half. It's the last 12 games of the year.
Yeah.
Like the fact that and maybe we're being slappies at this, but like the way he played the last 12 games last year has almost entirely changed my mind about him. Yeah. And it was quite literally coinciding with, I don't know, the role I said he should have been playing all year long. Jeez. Just gonna, pat myself on the back there.
I definitely don't disagree there.
But I don't want to trade Killian right now. He's still super young.
And the defensive chemistry that him and Kate have on the floor.
Absolutely. I think if you continue to play Killian in that bench point guard defensive specialist role, that kid's gonna flourish. Mm-hmm. Like I seriously think he's gonna succeed. I really do, and he's gonna have all the confidence. I'm
holding out hope that we have a young Marcus Smart coming off the bench for us. That's what I'm holding out hope for.
That would be so nice. He's got to hit the shot a little bit more, which he showed a little bit at the end of the year, but
definitely got to get way more consistent with it.
Yes, absolutely. But I'm in the camp of I don't know that I want to trade Killian.
So here's an interesting poll that got put up on on Reddit. It said if we did trade Jerami to Portland for the number 7 pick, you have these two choices of who you're drafting at 5 and 7. Choice A, you get Shaden Sharp at 5 and Jeremy Sochan at 7. The guy we haven't really talked about much in this pod. Or you get Keegan Murray and Ben Math at 5 and 7.
I don't like the combination of Keegan Murray and Ben Math. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, I like Ben Math, and Keegan Murray's a good player. I don't think Keegan Murray fits with this team. Like
I like it a lot more for trading Jerami Grant.
Yeah, I do too.
I hate the Keegan Murray pick if Jerami Grant's still on this basketball team.
I will say this. Anything I talk about from here to the draft is under the pretty much under the assumption that we are moving Jerami Grant. That includes the way that I'm looking at the draft, everything. Because I look at Keegan Murray and I wonder if the fit is even there when you have a guy like Sadiq Bey.
I know you're very true for the exact point that we talked about.
Right. I feel like yes, we remove the bad fit with Jerami Grant, but I feel like we're just reinserting one with Keegan Murray. That's why I don't necessarily love it.
So
Jeremy Sochan, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I can know enough about him right now to say yes or no to that.
I mean, I can give you
a guy who's drastically risen up draft boards lately.
Yeah,
he's the Baylor forward, isn't he?
Yep.
Okay.
He's
I saw his picture. I saw
probably the best defensive player in this draft.
Yeah. Draws a lot of comparisons to Kyle Kuzma is what I've heard. Very raw player.
I haven't heard a Kuzma comparison yet.
Really?
That's a new one for me.
Who I just pulled up his profile. That's exactly who NBA Draft Net's got him.
The two favorite that I've seen have been Draymond and Ben Simmons. Which both are guys who, like Jeremy Sochan, can defend all 5 positions. I think that's what they're basing it off of. These are players who
just
can defend
defensively or offensively too?
Well, I really do think when people throw comparisons, they're like, "Oh, I see a little bit of this guy in him. I see a little bit of this guy in him." I don't. So for me, it's both because he's not a scorer. Jeremy Sochan's
level, but does he have elite level playmaking abilities offensively? Because Draymond Green and Ben Simmons both have that. They're point guards, essentially.
I mean, I don't know if I would call it elite.
He averaged less than 2 assists a game. That's where I'm saying, I don't see it in that regard. I get it, he's not a scorer, but, Draymond Green can play the point guard effectively if you really want him to. He can run the offense. Ben Simmons did and averaged damn near 10 assists a game. That's where defensively, yes, I see it with Jeremy Sochan. I do not see it in any way with the offensive aspect, other than the fact that none of them score. Which that's not a good thing.
That's the question. Would you be willing to draft a guy who, unless he magically develops a jumper, willing to draft a guy that's basically going to be solely your defensive specialist at number 7?
That's not a big man? Probably not.
Well, he's 6'9". He's decently big.
That's Isaiah Stewart. Yeah, he's just a better defending Isaiah Stewart with less of an offensive game. And frankly, like, he doesn't play the 5. He plays the 3 and the 4. So is he able to even convert his game to down low? That's another question. I don't know. I don't like that either.
Yeah. I definitely love him as a prospect. I just don't
absolutely.
think I think he's definitely a prospect for a team that's a little bit closer.
That's
a little
fair.
bit closer to being complete. Which is why I in that poll voted for the Ben Math Keegan Murray combo. Yeah, I was very torn, and Reddit was very split too. It was 240 to 302 in favor of the Keegan Murray Ben Math combo. But I think it's because a lot of people are not as familiar with Jerami Sochan because he hasn't been talked about in the draft.
You could probably say a solid 35 to 40 of those votes aren't as familiar with a guy like Jerami Sochan. So let's go ahead and move on into kind of something that I was alluding to earlier in the show. And that's where I'm going to say, and this is going to be a super controversial opinion, but I've been doing some digging on around the league on some of these kind of fringe playoff teams or just playoff teams and ones that I know have had rebuilds recently and how long it took them. The time's starting to tick with the Pistons beginning this year. And by that I mean time is starting to tick with this rebuild in this front office. Let's be
honest, Troy's been on the clock since he drafted Cade. That's when the clock started for me.
In my opinion, it started with Killeen because missing your first draft is still a big problem. He was still the GM making that pick, and you need to hit your draft picks. He
did. He drafted 2 All-NBA guys in that draft. All-NBA rookie, all rookie guys, sorry.
That's fair. All rookie does not matter to me, though. I need guys who actually contribute, and I'll be honest with you, Isaiah Stewart did not contribute last year. He was a negative player. Sadiq, for the most part, was good. A little bit of a step back from what we expected, but was a good player. Showed a lot of flashes of big improvements. You look at, I've got 3 teams here. All went through bottom-out rebuilds, grabbed a really high-profile prospect at 1, 2, or 3. Actually, I think it is literally just 1 and 2. And within 3 years, have been back to the playoffs. It was either on their 4th year of the rebuild or their 3rd year of the rebuild. Let me count that. 1, 2, 3. Let's just put it this way. Since their last made playoffs, there has only been 3 years where they missed. Since. All 3 of these teams. And all 3 have high-profile young players that they grabbed at the top of the draft. Can you take a guess as to who these 3 teams are?
Dallas.
Yep. Minnesota? In the case with Minnesota, you can even make an argument that their rebuild only took 2 years before they made the playoffs again.
Memphis?
Yep. That's the 3rd. John Morant, Luka Doncic, Anthony Edwards. Those are the 3 guys. And in the case of Minnesota, yes, they have Karl-Anthony Towns. However, they did not have $35 million in cap space like you do with Pistons. And a lot of people would speculate that Karl-Anthony Towns is not really a very highly regarded plus player for the Minnesota Timberwolves because he's very much a me guy. He's wanted out every year for the past 3 years, and defensively speaking, he's garbage.
I mean, off the court, it's a distraction, but he's a beast on the court. We can't ignore
Offensively,
that.
defensively, he's terrible. Defensively, he's a turnstile. He's garbage. Offensively, yes, he's a great player. But looking at Minnesota 2 years ago, their roster had D'Angelo Russell, Cat still with the team, Andrew Wiggins no longer with the team, D'Lo's no longer with the team. That was their core. Since then, Anthony Edwards is obviously the big plus. There's your Cade, and they've built around him. They made the playoffs this year. 2 years rebuild. That was after going 19-45 in 2019-2020. You look at the 2018-2019 Timberwolves that went 36-36, something like that. They had Cat, Wiggins. God, that team sucked. And D-Rose. That was D-Rose's resurgent year. That team was terrible. But they won 36 games, more than the Pistons did this year. You look at the Dallas Mavericks. They went 42-40, made the playoffs 2015, 2016, 33-39, 24-58, 33-49. Then they went 43-32, made the playoffs with Luka in his rookie year. You look at the Memphis Grizzlies. They went 43-39 in 2016, 2017, made the playoffs. Then they went 22-60, 33-49, 34-39, and then made the playoffs the next year at 38-34 with Ja Morant. All of those stars in this conversation were in what year when they made the playoffs for the first time?
In those specific examples, they were all soft. Well, Luka's in his third year, right?
Luka, I think, was a rookie when they made the playoffs for the first time.
Okay.
2019-2020 year, that would be his rookie year, wouldn't it? I can get you...
No. Wasn't he wasn't it 2018-19 be his rookie year?
He was 20 that year, so that would have been his second year. 2018-2019, yes, that was his second year. They were all sophomores. Ja would be in his third year. No, because they made the playoffs last year too, so his second year. All of these teams made the playoffs again in their second year and were in very similar situations to the Pistons last year.
I think I agree with you on Dallas and Memphis. I do think the Minnesota one's a little unfair because before they drafted Anthony Edwards, they still already had a
they did have
back-to-back two-time All-Star on their team.
They did have
made the playoffs
but
just 2 years prior.
The one thing that the Pistons have that none of these teams had was $35 million in cap space. So there's your cat. I'm considering that a wash. If you bring in DeAndre Ayton, there's your wash.
That's if you bring in DeAndre Ayton.
But
you might not.
I would sure hope if you have
DeAndre Ayton might not even leave Phoenix.
No, and that's fine. I'm just saying if I sure hope, and this is absolutely a test of a GM, if you have $35 million in cap space, you need to spend it on guys that are going to put you in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's why I consider it a wash with Cat and 35 mil, because what else are you going to spend that on? Because if you're spending it on anything but a guy who's going to put you into the playoffs, you can take a walk.
Team-friendly deals, and then next offseason where you have a lot more prospects in the water.
And no money to spend because you spend it all on garbage?
No, team-friendly deals that you can then move. Then you blow your load next offseason.
Fine, whatever. I'm not just saying this year in particular. I'm saying that the clock is beginning now in terms of, all right, we need the shit or get off the pot here. Like, I'm not saying they have to make the playoffs this year. But if they don't make the playoffs next year, that's a red X in my mind.
That I agree with.
This year, I absolutely 100% think they need to be competing. Like, this would be, in my book...
As much as I love next year's draft class, I don't want to be in a position to draft top 5 again. Like, I don't know how many times I can do this.
And using Minnesota for an example is a bad one here, but you saw improvements from Anthony Edwards in his rookie year. But if you look at Dallas, for example, they went from 24-58 to 33-49 the following year in Luka's rookie year, before Luka's second year where they made the playoffs. You look at Memphis, they went, this is a weird one too, but they went 22-60, then 33-49, then 34-49. There was improvement between the 22-60 and 33-49. We didn't see the improvement this year in terms of the record. I need to see next year at the very least. What was the Pistons record this year? 22 and hang on, I got it here. 23-59. I need to see at least 28-32 wins this year. At least.
I legit thought we were going to get 32 wins this year.
I did too.
This past season.
I'll say this. You don't have 30 wins this year, that's a red X in my book.
That's what I'm saying. As much as I love next year's draft class, and I love next year's draft class, it would hurt me to be picking top 5 again, because I'm really expecting to be out of that position by then.
I've given you an example of 3 teams who picked a guy number 1 or number 2 overall in the last, so many years here. All of them made the playoffs in their second year. All of them. All 3 of them.
Yeah, and one of them, Memphis, their GM won exec of the year, right?
Yes, he did. And you look at Memphis's team, and yes, that Memphis team is very good. because of Ja Morant. He's a big reason why, but they're also good because of the other guys they drafted. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a big role player on that team. Like they've
that's a really well built team.
Absolutely,
100%.
Absolutely. And in my book, the Pistons need to be that. They need to be that good. Like Cade's got to be the lead guy. They've got to have Sadiq be every bit as important and productive as a Jaren Jackson. Like they've got to have these guys that were drafted by Troy Weaver step up and produce.
Yeah.
Winning basketball, not just flashy numbers, not just whatever. Winning basketball.
What's your take on the debate of like if you were to go back to that Zion John Morant draft, is Zion still number one pick? No, now. That's been a raging debate on NBA Twitter.
If you watch Zion, if you look at the numbers of Zion when he has played, the dude is unbelievable.
Oh yeah,
unbelievable. But I think that the bridge with...
But there was always the durability concern.
Yes. I think
and knowing what you know now, that's basically coming to fruition.
You have to, by default, put Ja Morant at number one. But, like, Zion Williamson, when he plays, is the better player.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
He just doesn't play.
Yeah, he just doesn't play.
I think Ja Morant actually made the playoffs in his rookie year.
His rookie year would have been 2019, 2020, right?
Sorry, he in his second year. So all three of these guys made the playoffs their second year.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big...
Now, all three teams are at a better starting point when they drafted their franchise cornerstone.
I disagree with you 100%.
Weren't they all at least 30-win teams when they drafted their franchise
Minnesota
cornerstone?
won 23 games. They won fewer games. They won as many games.
Yeah, but they just made the playoffs the year prior and had a two-time All-Star team already.
Their mark here is exactly the same as the Pistons mark. The Pistons and the T-Wolves' last playoff appearance were both 2017, 2018. Both. They each had missed the playoffs 3 years in between. Sorry, the Pistons made it, so this would be the Pistons.
But obviously the T-Wolves clock started earlier than the Pistons. The Pistons started rebuilding in 2019, 2020.
T-Wolves started rebuilding 2019, 2020. They won 19 games that year. That was the rebuild year. So no.
Interesting.
The clock is not any different here. The T-Wolves just did it better.
T-Wolves just had Cat. That was what it was.
There are a lot of people in the basketball world that don't think Cat is a plus player for the Minnesota Timberwolves because of how bad he is defensively and because of the issues that he creates in the locker room. He puts up a lot of numbers, sure. There's a lot of people who don't believe he's a plus player. I like Cat personally. I think defensively though he's god awful, like terrible.
Can't really argue that one.
He is absolutely terrible defensively.
But yeah, no, like my take in terms of like the Pistons clock and all that, like.
And the Mavericks.
The very first step. Yeah, what's up?
To give you an example with the Mavericks, 2 years before they made the playoffs, they were a 24-win team. Then they won 33 because they improved because of the rookie year of Luka Doncic. Pistons didn't improve. They got worse. I don't know about worse, but they didn't improve. They won 3 more games. Whoa. And
it felt for a long time like they got worse, and if it wasn't for that,
3 more games in a season,
if it wasn't for that mid-season post All-Star game streak where they started ripping off wins, they would have actually finished.
The
worse. Pistons
won 3 more games in a season that played 10 more games than the year prior. So did they improve? No, they very much flatlined.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I do still feel like the team as is right now is still obviously a very incomplete roster.
So but the Mavericks when they won 24 games.
I do think the pieces are in place, especially depending how you draft and whatever we end up doing Jerami Grant. You definitely will have the pieces in place to win more than 23 games next season. Like, so Cade Cunningham alone, as long as you have the proper pieces around him, that should alone get you above 30 wins.
Here is something that I think is extremely eye-opening. If you look at the Dallas Mavericks from the year that they won 24 games, and this is how fast they turned this around because 2 years later, they made the playoffs. 2 years. There is 3 players left in that roster that still are on that team producing today.
Yeah, and the Pistons kind of did the same thing. They did it very early on in the rebuild.
And the Pistons are now on year 3 of that.
Entering year 3, but I gotcha. Yeah.
Well, based on that metric, the Mavericks made the playoffs. That year, that third year, they made the playoffs.
So basing on that metric, you're saying Mavericks Pistons should make the playoffs in
Based on that
like
metric,
this year,
I
in 2022,
am saying
2023.
the Pistons need to win at least 30 games this year and make playoffs next year, or this thing's just taking too damn long and it's not working.
Yeah.
And that's a referendum on Troy Weaver, in my mind. The way he's put this team together, the guys he drafted, the guys he signed, they didn't work. You know, we drafted a bunch of guys that we like. Obviously, Cade's a great player. Sadiq, we like a lot. He's really good. Isaiah Stewart's got a role. But if they don't work and you don't make the playoffs or play winning basketball, what was it for? Yeah. I think that the team with Andre Drummond, Tobias Harris, Reggie Jackson, that team had a lot of good players on it that just didn't work together. You know, we've seen them go elsewhere and be successful. Look at Reggie Jackson with the Clippers. Look at Tobias Harris with the Sixers. They've seen success elsewhere. Yeah, they just didn't work together here.
And I to this day hate the fact they traded Tobias. I really liked him in Detroit, but
I am glad we traded him because have you seen that fucking contract now?
Well, I mean, yeah, but we traded him for the Blake Griffin contract. So what's the difference?
Right. But again, that Tobias contract now, I would want nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
No.
I wanted no parts of the Blake Griffin contract.
Neither did I. But man, that Tobias contract now is abysmal.
But yes, like what I'm saying though, yeah, I do think that if the Pistons don't reach 30 wins in the 2022-2023 season, that is a definite red flag
that's a red X in my mind.
What we're building here, something is just not working.
Yep.
Something is not clicking. And I don't know if you're going to need a tear down, but something's got to change. Now, assuming you cross that 30 win benchmark this year, going into next year,
you must make
playoffs
the
are definitely the expectation.
Yes, you must make the playoffs. And I'm not talking the play-in game as a 10 seed. I'm talking you must make the playoffs.
Well, here's what I'm prefacing.
Now, if you make the playoffs as by virtue of a 10 seed, fine, but you must make the playoffs.
Here's what I'm prefacing is if I really like the product I see on the court, but we just miss the cut by playoffs, maybe we lose a bubble game or something. Like if I'm seeing a drastic improvement in the product on the court in that season, and I have the utmost faith, I think this is a playoff roster, I'm willing to be okay with it, but
I'm not.
That has to mean that what I see on the court, I fully believe is a playoff roster. We just got some insanely bad luck. Maybe it was an injury or something. Like maybe we got bad luck that year.
Don't give a shit. I don't care. You don't make the playoffs in 2 years, that's a red X. 100% in my book. If you do not make the playoffs, that is a red X. Because if we continue to give, and this is true with all Detroit fans, and including myself, if we continue to just say, oh, we'll get them next year, when is that next year going to come? At some point, we have to set a hard line in the sand and say, this is it. Do it or get out.
The only reason it's not a hard line for me in 2023, 2024 is because of the fact that I feel that's going to be the first.
Year 4 of Troy Weaver. Yeah. How many years do you need to rebuild a team when I've given you 3 examples of teams that did it in one fewer year?
Because, and I think you agree with me here, that's the first year I think we're going to be even ready to compete for a playoff spot. So if they don't make the playoffs in the first year that I feel like we're going to have a roster that's ready to compete for a playoff spot, I'm not going to throw the panic.
For a playoff spot, what is the expectation?
It's playoffs. I'm saying
if you don't meet expectations, that's a red X.
No, I understand, but I'm not hitting the panic. As long as I like what I see on the court, I'm not hitting the panic button. Now, if it happened the second season, I'm like, all right.
I'm not saying go out and fire the guy, but that's strike 2 in my book. If you don't make the playoffs...
Oh, when you said red X, I thought you meant like panic button.
No.
Fire sale.
You get 3 strikes in my book here. Not having 30 wins next year, that's strike 1. Year following, not making the playoffs, that's strike 2. And frankly, even if you hit 30 wins next year, if you don't hit the playoffs in year 4, that's strike 2 in my mind no matter what. That's an automatic 2 strikes right there. You got 1 year to get your shit together or you're out in my book. I love Troy Weaver. I love what he's doing, and I love the way he's putting this team together. But at some point, we have to see production and wins. We have to see playoff series here. Multiple. We have to see wins in this town and in this arena.
I mean, we haven't had a playoff win since 2008, is it? 2009?
Right. And I'm not blaming Troy Weaver for, obviously, any of those years.
Yeah. No, I know.
At the same time,
but the Pistons,
there has to be a limit on how long I'm willing to give Troy Weaver to get this thing right. I
There's
don't like.
I'm saying there's a reason you're like the air of impatience is there is because of the fact that
I'm not even gonna say it's
rebuilding for so damn long.
I don't think it should take you 5 years to put a playoff team together in the NBA. I showed you 3 teams that did it in 3, and don't sit here and tell me that the Memphis Grizzlies and Minnesota Timberwolves and Dallas Mavericks are these historic franchises that people are dying to go play for because newsflash, nobody wants to play in freaking Minneapolis. Nobody.
Yeah, no, I did not give you that argument for Minnesota or for
and I'll tell you right now,
Memphis.
for as many people that don't want to play in Minneapolis, there's probably 10 more that don't want to play in Memphis.
I do think Dallas might have a little bit of an argument, but I would not give you the argument for Minnesota or for Memphis.
Names, but they haven't. That's a fact. They haven't. Who's there with Luka? Nobody. Reggie Bullock. He just went 0 for 10.
That's the big problem right now is the fact that Luka is basically by himself in a minute. And wow,
still look what he's doing. He's in the Western Conference Finals. Still look what he's doing.
Yeah.
My point is, though, is if the Pistons can't at least make the playoffs after next season, in the season after next, that's a huge red X in my mind. And I don't care if they miss it by a game. I don't care if they miss it by 20. That's that's a big red X regardless in my mind. They should be in the playoffs.
And I think a big reason for that, too, is the fact that next year you have both. If you miss your goal this year, you have an insanely good draft class next year, or at least a top end heavy draft class next year. Not to mention you have a really good free agency class next year. You have to be able to capitalize on one of those two things. And I do think between what we have the potential to do with moving Jerami Grant this offseason and with having a top 5 pick in this year's draft, plus what the potential of just possibilities is in the next offseason, 2023-2024 offseason, you should be able to maneuver your way into position where you're competing for a playoff spot.
Let's put it this way, and this is as plainly as I can put it. If Troy Weaver doesn't hit 30, let's say he doesn't hit 30 wins next year. All right, let's say he hits 28, whatever. You got a top 10 pick. Even if he hits 30 wins, he ends up with like pick 12 or something, and he doesn't make the playoffs the next year. He would have had 3 top 10 picks, $30+ million in cap space, and 2 more first round picks inside the top 20, and still couldn't just make the playoffs. He would have had 5 first round picks, including 2 in the top 5 and 2 in the top 10. And one of those being a number 1 overall, and $35 million in cap space, and couldn't get it done. Couldn't even make the playoffs. That, in my mind,
why does it sound like we're being so negative on Troy Weaver when I feel like he hasn't really done anything for us to be negative on him?
No, and you know what? Here's where I'll say this. The expectations are in place because of how good of a job he's done.
Yeah.
If you're just a bad organization with no expectations, that is a referendum on your front office right there, that they do such a bad job, you expect nothing. I set expectations for Troy Weaver and this team because of how good he's done. Because of the fact that Sadiq Bey was a great find with a trade piece. Because of the fact that Isaiah Stewart plays a good role. Because of the fact that he potentially has found a way to
actually the greatest tank job in NBA history. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well,
no, I won't say that. I would probably argue the teams that did it in a year less had the greatest tank job. Like Dallas probably is arguably the greatest tank job in history. But the way that they he's done a really good job so far with what he's gotten. I like what he's built, and because of that, I set the expectations. I'm not going to say that, I truly don't believe we're setting the bar high here because I just showed you 3 teams that did it and are doing it now. They rebuilt the whole damn thing in 3 years.
Not to mention as Detroit fans, like you're looking at a team like the Tigers who have brought actually quite a bit of talent.
Don't even get me freaking started about that team.
And it's just not
utter failure.
It's just not coming together. Like you're gonna start having panic mode in the city if the same thing starts happening to the Pistons.
You know what hurts me the most about the Tigers, and if this were to ever happen to the Pistons, you'd probably have to put a big E on every single podcast we did for the next year with this show. Out of all the superstars the Tigers had, the David Prices, the Max Scherzers, the Rick Porcellos, the Justin Verlanders, the Ian Kinslers, the whoever, the JD Martinez's, Jose Iglesias, out of Nick Castellanos, all of those superstars, they have not gotten one big leaguer out of it. Not one. If that doesn't tell you how bad of a job that the GM of that team, Al Avila, has done, could you imagine the Pistons traded away every single one of their stars? Guys like Cade Cunningham traded away, and they got not a single productive NBA player out of it?
No,
Holy hell, we'd probably burn down LCA.
I mean, you could throw my dad into the GM role. He probably could have done as well at that point.
And that right there is why I set expectations for my teams and why I believe that you need to actually get things done in a timely fashion because other teams are doing it. And I'm not willing to sit here and wait. Like, we need to actually start getting things done, seeing some production out of what we've built here. A rebuild shouldn't take 5 years. Frankly, I don't even know if a rebuild should take 4. We've seen 3 teams do it in 3.
Yeah.
If you want to say 4, fine. I'm good with that. You had to tear the whole damn thing down. I get that.
we did overturn the entire roster. If you want to be
realistic about it, it would be year 4, yes. Because Troy Weaver would have taken over the team. Yeah, year 4. They need to make the playoffs in year 4. That's a huge red X in my mind. And if year 5 comes along and you didn't make the playoffs in year 4 and year 5 comes along and you didn't make the playoffs again, yeah, get out.
I'm done at that point.
I'm done with you. Get out. But again, I have very high expectations for Troy Weaver. I love what he's done, and I'm extremely excited about the future of this team because if there is one person in this town not named Steve Yzerman, that I would say that I trust with 5 draft picks, including 2 in the top 5, 3 in the top 10, and $35 million in cap space, it's Troy Weaver.
Yeah.
Because I know he will produce for us and get things done.
And here's one last point I want to add in terms of your timeline that you're presenting to. There is one very important distinction to make in this timeline, and that is Cade Cunningham. If by year 4 you don't make the playoffs, you're starting to flirt with losing Cade Cunningham.
I don't think you're flirting with him. I think he's gone. He's gone. If you don't make the playoffs, if you don't make at least 2 playoff years with Cade Cunningham on your roster, he's gone.
Because after that season, that's when he's up for his rookie extension, right? After the 2023-2024 season.
I'll tell you that answer.
But either way,
there's option years. There's an option year.
Oh yeah, there are option years, but ideally you want to extend your
right. You want to get them in there.
You want to lock them in.
2020. Well, actually, after 2022, 2023 is his first option year. So after this upcoming season is his first option year. Yes.
Okay. But because basically what I'm getting at is
extension eligible after 2024, after 2023, 2024. Yes, so he's eligible for that rookie extension after that year.
Okay, because that goes right to your point of if after because for me the biggest red mark that any GM in the city could make is losing
a
franchise cornerstone and to something other than I just want to go play for a big city or a big market. If this team, this front office did anything to lose Cade Cunningham due to the fact that we just couldn't put a team together around him and win basketball games, that would be the biggest red X. I mean, that would fall right in line with if they didn't make the playoffs by the 2020-2024 season.
I would be
you're running that risk.
Disheartened as a Pistons fan if he walked because we couldn't put a winning team together. Oh my God, that would just absolutely crush my soul.
Yeah.
I would end up turning into how I feel with the Lions.
Smeagol? Oh.
No, that would literally turn me into how I feel with the Lions, which effectively is Smeagol.
You start going to different NBA arenas, looking for Cade Cunningham, my precious.
All right, and on that note, Pistons fans are going to turn into Smeagol. No,
going to end the show.
I fully expect this team's going to give us some winning basketball. If not this year, then next year, absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of good things to come. I know this seemed very doom and gloom, but it wasn't. I wasn't trying to push that argument.
Yeah, I'm actually very optimistic about the Pistons.
These are the expectations set because we're optimistic.
Yeah.
This is that we think this is going to happen. So, anyways.
And next week, I'll tell you how I'm actually somehow optimistic about the Lions for once.
Oh! Wow, that's a hell of a teaser. I like it. All right, guys, that is going to close it out for this week. We thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at RealFanReport. And check out Detroit Sports Podcast. Thank you guys out there for producing our show, our lovely show. If you guys have any questions, comments, or just want to shoot the shit, talk some sports with us, hit us up on Twitter. Andrew, thank you for joining me, and thank you guys as always for listening.
Thank
we
you
will
all.
catch you guys next week. Sorry about the 1 week layoff. You know, we deserve a vacation every now and then too. But this has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
We don't live in your phone. For fans.
Have a good one, guys. See you next week. Peace out.
Peace.